Welcome to Build Your Own Business podcast with myself, Andrew Ford. Today I have a guest who's a little bit different in that she's not traditionally a corporate escapee running her own small business or portfolio organization like we have. So I met her in a networking event, and the reason I asked Michelle on is to talk mainly about networking, but she's also got a really interesting past that I want to get into and has run her own business. So I do want to delve into those, but I'll let her explain a bit more about what she's doing today, and then we'll go back in history and see why she's doing what she's doing. But let's first welcome Michelle Letho. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. I am Michelle Letho from Melbourne. Uh, if you're looking at me,
Not today, though.
no, I'm in Noosa today. Uh, if you're looking for me on LinkedIn, my surname rhymes with Metho, but with an L, Letho.
Ah, there
So
you go.
I'm a sales management expert. I help businesses grow and scale so that they can prosper and thrive and achieve your objectives.
Lovely. That's a good introduction. In fact, I feel like I'm in Noosa because I've got this sort of t-shirt vibes because Melbourne's so sunny at the moment. But you're actually in the real deal. I'm just in the pretend deal. I'm in the office in Melbourne. But we met at a networking event and have caught up from time to time. And I was just very impressed with the way your brand, if you like. So your brand is not, your LinkedIn profile, your logo. It's how you show up and how people think of you. And I always thought of you as, this person that I could go to and have a chat, very open and friendly. And when we reached out just for a conversation, you talked about networking and what you're doing a bit more in that space. And I thought it'd be really valuable to the listeners. So we're going to delve into that, but not quite yet. We want to save the best for last. What I wanted to do is get you to just say where you're working now and a little bit about that, and then I'm going to ask you some questions about the past because I love digging into people's histories. Probably didn't warn you about that, but that's what we're going to do. Not too deep. I'm not going to dig too deep, just a little bit. But tell us where you're working now, because I believe you're working for a big company. It's quite inspiring.
It's actually a small company, and ironically, I'm working for a startup. So, and I'm the first employee for the startup. So much, I've been in startups before that have been my own. So, quite similarly, I'm working for a company called Willyama Togetha. It's an Indigenous Atlassian Platinum Solutions partner. Essentially, one of the co-founders is Indigenous, and together, there's two companies that have formed Willyama Togetha. Basically, we're here to support reconciliation action plans for organisations through Atlassian, not only the licenses but their services as well.
Yeah, and that's what, because I was thinking Atlassian, I'm thinking big company, but obviously it's a new part of
We're
that,
a partner
or
to
not that
Atlassian.
organization. Partner,
So,
yes, but what you're doing is a new venture between those partners.
yeah, that's right.
And Atlassian, for those who don't know, is a big software tech company.
It's
You
great that you
can
should
Google
say
it,
that.
look it up.
I think language is such a barrier sometimes to networking, and it's great to be reminded. So if people are familiar with workflow management software like Jira and knowledge management software like Confluence, they may have been around Atlassian products. A entry level workflow tool that some people are more familiar with might be Trello.
Hmm. And the good thing about Atlassian, or the interesting thing about Atlassian, is it's an Australian organisation that's one of the first unicorns that got to $1 billion status, and sells products worldwide. But it's an Australian company, which is kind of cool. And the founders are quite prolific in their entrepreneurial activities and a range of different things, which you can Google and research. But they're a pretty fascinating company to be around. I don't really know them that well, but I've read about them and heard about them from an entrepreneurial perspective. So, but interesting that you've got this, new thing that you're doing, and we want to hear a bit more about that. But I want to delve back in the past because I always think that people's pasts are interesting to talk about why they're doing what they're doing today. And my first question is, what was your first paying job?
Uh, like, are we talking like first teenage job or?
Yeah, I'm talking about like lemonade stand at front of your parents' house when you're 5 years old, or
Uh,
selling mixtapes at high school, or
yeah, lots of things. So I grew. My parents were young when they had us, and so I always appreciated
when you,
what we had.
when you say us. Big family or?
I'm the eldest of 4 kids. I grew up in Kerrang,
Okay.
which is in northeastern Victoria on the border of New South Wales.
Farmers or
What's that?
were they
No,
farmers
they weren't
or?
farmers. They worked in the town. So my mum and dad met at A Franzini Proprietary Limited, which is a family business. It's been in the family since 1890. My
Wow.
great grandfather was first generation Australia, Swiss Italian, and they went from beautiful North Swiss Italian background to this very arid, dry countryside town called Kerrang. I
Why?
have no
Like,
idea. I think there was a family scandal and they maybe had connections up there. But yeah, my
that's
great
fascinating.
grandfather, he founded an engineering works actually in the town and built the first car in the town. And it's
Wow.
still a different form and guise, but it still exists today. It's over 100 years. So I grew up in this small town called Kerrang, and I pumped petrol from the garage.
How old were you when you were doing that?
14.
14. So this blonde girl pumping petrol, getting like, would you take the money or would you like, would the person go into the shop as well or
And
like,
I came
was
out
it full?
to actually give good old fashioned service.
Yeah, that's what I
Yeah,
mean.
fill
It's
up the
like old school.
Bowser, take your money, and yes, process it.
Bring it back to you. You didn't even have to get out of your car. It's bloody
Yeah.
sensational. Should bring that back. Although I got a Tesla, so it doesn't matter anymore. So, and you did that as that was your family business, or was a friend's business? How'd you get that job?
Oh, yeah, it was the family business. So at the time, my
Mm,
grandfather owned it.
yeah, wow. And did everyone, all the kids work through it? Was that sort of like the tradition?
Yeah, both brothers got apprenticeships there. Yeah,
Yeah,
they did the mechanical apprenticeship. Actually, sorry, one brother did. One did a mechanical apprenticeship elsewhere.
yeah. And how long did you do that for? How long was this pump? Was it like a summer job or like?
Yeah, just until I was old enough to work at IGA.
Ah,
I was a
the
deli
natural
chick.
progression. Yeah. And so you always worked. They must have had a work ethic sort of culture in your family.
Yeah, I was also a teenager and I wanted to go shopping. We worked in this small little town with no retail, no online uh, capability back
Yeah,
then.
cut
So
off.
I would get on
Yeah.
the train. It was about a 4 hour train to Melbourne, save up all my
Oh my
money
god.
and have big shopping trips, come back home.
Where'd you go? Would you like go to Maya or something, or go to
Yeah,
the
we'd
city?
go to the Burke Street, but at the time, Greville Street was my kind of genre, and
Ah,
Chapel Street.
oh, look at you. Still cool and trendy today. And so that was so there's a motivation there to I probably you know be a bit different and because you could have just I'm sure a lot of the kids didn't wear shirt clothes from Greville Street
Yeah,
in Kerrang.
I always wanted to do what I wanted to do. So I never really fitted in to the subculture of a small town where poppy
Yeah.
syndrome exists. I was on the
Mm,
student representative council. I did business when all my friends or were doing science, health science kind of subjects. I had to economics by correspondence because they didn't have enough numbers to support it. I've always followed my own passions.
your own pain.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I was just literally talking to my staff about what makes a Bob person different from a regular person who might work for a company, and it seems to be an innate desire for freedom and control of your own destiny.
Yeah, I grew up in this town where there was a lot of unhappy housewives. So
Mm,
in
interesting.
unhappy relationships, and you hear the rumors about affairs and whatnot in small towns. And I saw a lot
Mm,
of females in the town that stayed in really unhappy relationships. And my parents are still
because
together and they're beautiful people. I'm so blessed to have such great role models and they're, very loving parents. From around the town, though, my motivation was to have financial freedom, to be able to make my own choices in life so that whatever
mm,
life threw at me, I had choices and control.
mm, wow, and that's it's this is why I look at people's backgrounds because it's the seeds of entrepreneurship are sown in those sort of beliefs and difficulties generally, because you need a lot of motivation to study economics by remote and to catch a train 4 hours just to buy some clothes, like, and work that hard to get them. So it's, they're it's not just about comfort, it's about something greater, I feel. And like for you, it's about, independence, perhaps.
There's
So
independence,
like
and
that.
I'm also really curious. My
Mm,
biggest hero in life was my grandmother, so Rita Franzini. She was just the most selfless person, and but family was everything. And everyone
mm,
she came across, she made them feel special, made them feel listened to and valued. And I take a lot from what she was, who she stood for, the things that were important to her. And that's something that I carry forward in my interactions is you can learn so much by actually listening to people and being curious.
yeah.
And the gift that you give them, which is your ear and your time, it's really precious.
Yeah, wow. And it's unusual. I would also say that a lot of people, we met at or we've spent some time together at networking events, and some of those have been sort of pitch fests and entrepreneurial ones. And mostly everyone wants to tell you their pitch, so and ask you for money, but it's or for help with something. But it's interesting because there's a few people who actually are genuinely interested in the people, not just the idea or the what the idea could do for them financially. It's and you stood out a lot to me in that regard, and I still remember those, that impression you made upon me, which, I must thank your grandmother, for that upstairs. So fast forward, you're in a small town, you're studying correspondence and going to the local high school, I presume. And then you went to university, I presume. You
Yeah.
made the bold choice to go
Yep,
to
that was my
come to Melbourne.
ticket out of Kerrang. I couldn't wait to get to the big city, the big smoke. Yes, so I packed up my Mitsubishi Colt hatchback to the roof. I headed down there with the Melways on my lap, got terribly
Yeah,
lost. I ended up around the roundabout near Melbourne Uni, like doing a couple of rounds with tears in my
I
eyes,
know.
trying to find where I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
going. However, I landed at Victoria University in Footscray. Really had
Mm,
not much familiarity with Melbourne. Didn't know where
mm.
Footscray was or what it was like. And I was the first. Actually, my cousin and I were the first in our generation to go to uni. So
Mm.
it was navigating a lot of paths.
And what did you study?
I did a Bachelor of Business with a major in
Mm.
international trade, and I did another major in marketing and a sub major in Asian culture.
Yeah, the curiosity is going to include some more hours at university, it would appear. So, and I presume you did very well, as
Yeah, I worked like a
or,
Trojan because I had to support myself financially. So I had to manage my time really well. And I did pretty well overall. I did do some interesting things. I got to a scholarship to study in Thailand, and I
oh
learned
wow,
Thai,
that's
which was
cool.
pretty cool. I did a semester at Curtin University, which was an amazing university. I did most of my marketing units over there.
Mm,
Did really really well. And there's other subjects where I had really dry lecturers who are research based, spoke in a
mm,
monotonous tone for 3 hours
mm,
straight. And, I might have scraped through on one or two of those.
yeah,
But
yeah.
overall, when I was actually asked, because I ended up becoming a graduate with Mars Confectionery, went through this harrowing 2 day psychological testing with your peers and all the rest of it. And they said to me, "Are you happy with your marks?" And I said, "I am absolutely 100% happy." I did all of this stuff because one of the other things I did when I was at uni was they had this Young Achievers program. And so I was the
Mm.
managing director of a group of 22 students. We made a
Oh
called
wow,
Dig the Jig, and we had a return on investment of 300 and something percent in 6 months back to our shareholders. Yeah.
wow. There you go. Entrepreneurial flair right back then. What were you doing as work to support yourself back in the deli, or?
Oh, no, I worked at I worked at a place called the Sheep's Back across from the Stock Exchange, which was a bar. So I did
Okay.
lunch service in made coffees and whatnot. And then I was
Mm.
working for Pancake Parlor was another one.
Ah, they were big. Yeah, they're still around, but they were big back then. I
Yeah.
remember.
So
Mm.
hospitality.
Hospo. Well, it's pretty standard sort of university fare for people. Flexible shifts. Penalty rates. Though penalty rates back then,
I
working
wasn't seeing
holidays.
them.
No, yeah. I was trying to explain to my young staff about how times were different back then. It wasn't, there's a lot of protection on staff and rights. And back then it was like, just do what you're told and shut up and, get paid what they pay you. So fast forward, you got um, you said an internship at Mars Confectionery, you said?
Yeah, I was on the graduate intake. Yeah,
Grad
so
program.
it was
Mm.
it was for a territory management manager, which is
Ah,
effectively sales. So when I
mm,
finished my degree, I was hell bent on a marketing career, and the mentor for the Young Achievement Australia program that I was managing director for, he said to me, the best marketers have sales experience. If you really want to be great at marketing, you need to be really good at sales. So it was a two-pronged approach because the market was a bit tough when I graduated. I was
yeah.
applying for marketing roles and not getting much traction. And
Mm,
I thought, okay, I'll apply for sales roles. The Mars experience was extraordinary. It was phone interviewed 50 people for one role. We met at a
yeah.
hotel at like 6 p.m. and at 8 p.m. we were told to come back the next day for a full day. A full day. We were given a case study to do overnight, and we had to present it to our
Oh,
competitors.
wow.
We had to work in these groups with our competitors for the role.
Wow. That's tough. People would be like, hang on, that's my personal time. I can't possibly do that
There
overnight.
was a
But
few people that didn't
you know,
come back the next day.
well, and that's the thing is, it's interesting. I run a few hurdles with hiring for my small company because I believe the number one trait that has proven successful is that they really want the job. They really want to work here, and they'll do a bit extra to prove that they really want to work here, not just get a job kind of anywhere. So maybe it's not a bad tactic. Did you work there for long? Like, did you have a tenure there,
I
or?
worked there for 2 years.
Mm. And was that good? Was it proved correct that sales is helpful for marketing? Do you think?
Yeah. Yes, 100%. It's so symbiotic.
Mm.
You need good marketing to support sales, and they
Mm.
need each other. So there were some great marketers at Mars, and
Mm.
got to leverage their material, and yeah, it was a grounding experience.
Yeah. Look, I went to my family company, and my first job was in the warehouse. Realized I didn't like working in the warehouse, so then I went into the office and did inbound sales and did outbound sales. And I fully believe it makes me a better marketer because I understand customers and I understand how hard it is to sell something. And so therefore I'm not wishy-washy with my marketing. It's very practical because I realize that, at the end of the day, someone has to get a product and exchange some money for the company to survive. So, but you then went into, bigger and better things at another big company. Did Mars help you get to this next company, or did you Simplot? Mhm.
Uh, in a way, I was quite motivated to leave. My boyfriend at the time had moved to Melbourne, so I wanted to get back to Melbourne, and culturally, it wasn't a good fit for me. So,
Mm.
yeah, Simplot was a wonderful organisation. So, it's owned by a family, it's privately owned. So, Mars was also privately owned. So, it's interesting not
Mm.
having the same market pressures as an ASX company.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
That
Mm.
said, yeah, I guess in that respect, Mars did help motivate me towards the next role.
Mm. Well, it's also it gives you the experience to be able to get the next role because it's hard to break into a big company without having some prior experience. So you were Simplot for a while though. But how was that experience? Was that
Yeah, I
uh,
loved it. I really enjoyed
yeah?
it. I think the culture, when you find an aligned culture and you feel valued and that your contribution matters. Also, when you're challenged and you have the opportunity to learn and grow, and feel supported. Yeah, it was wonderful.
Oh, that's good. And it's good to have those experiences because it's not always like that, obviously. And so, and I wonder whether that's, from the founders or from they've hired well, or it's necessity on, you know, being able to attract good quality staff. What was your sort of experience of that? Did you have any experience with the owners or?
Not directly with the owners because they're actually US based, and at my level, I wasn't exposed to them. I guess
Mm,
just culturally, they hired for a particular alignment and fit. There's still
okay.
diversity in terms of personalities in the team. Uh, yeah, I guess they had values, and when they recruited, they looked to hire for those values.
Yeah. I mean, I worked at Hewlett Packard and they talked about Bill and Dave, the founders, nonstop. They had a book. I read the book. The values were from like it was very much about the founder's vision and the culture when you're on board. So I'm in small town Melbourne, and they're in Silicon Valley. They invented Silicon Valley, but their belief system was very much the ethos of what it was supposed to be. Didn't always represent that, but that was a lot of it was actually very very withheld, very much up to that standard, which was great until I had a big merger and then it all went to pieces. But it's interesting how if you are running a business, you can put your fingerprint on those values, whereas in like you mentioned before, of publicly listed companies, it's just got different pressures. And I find that those values just seem to fall away when the founders are not there. In replacement of commercialism and sort of the next quarterly growth figure. So, have you found that at all when you worked for other companies that were publicly listed?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, different pressures. Yeah, and I guess the short term horizon as well. So when you work for a private company, there is the influence, as you just mentioned, Andrew, with the founders, particularly if they're still around and active in the business. I think their presence brings something unique. They're Yeah, it's a special moment if you've gotten to meet them in person, for example, or
Mm,
they're present in your town halls, or whatever they represent is coming through. And I think that's probably what gets lost in a publicly listed company is
mm,
there's a changing of the guard sometimes, and they get a short window to prove themselves.
mm. Yeah, I think and it's also when you're an impressionable young person, a small amount of attention from someone you look up to can make a really big
Yeah,
difference.
totally. I just messaged about 4 months ago one of the most impressionable people at my time at Simplot, and I'll call him out. His name is John Day. He was the general manager when I was new to Simplot. He would walk around on all levels and talk to people, identify them by name, and just be human with them,
Be
have that
human.
connection. He would remember
Yeah.
conversations and make people feel valued, acknowledge things that happened that were good.
Mm.
He was just a lovely person that was really warm, and it's something that even to this day, he's a role model.
So that's fantastic. I think that companies sometimes underestimate the value of those people who are the glue. Um, they look at spreadsheet performance and not necessarily culture performance. I think maybe we're getting better at that. I remember a period of time when you know there was cutbacks in the bad days of the 2000s when I was in IT, the tech wreck, and all of those people went. If you weren't contributing to the bottom line, you were gone. And what we found after that is that you know no one remembered birthdays. There was no team building. There was no it was basically just commerce. And consequently, the companies then started to crumble because without the glue, funnily enough, things fall apart. When you're all just individuals, the boss at the time, I remember, he would call it sort of the 9 a.m. car park rule. You drive into the car park at 9 a.m., it's mostly empty. People are just rocking in wherever they feel like it because they're just not motivated. They're punching the clock, they're doing what they have to do, but they're not putting in the extra. They're not committed to the company. They don't identify with the values. They're not inspired. And I think that those people, like you mentioned, are the people who make that happen. They don't have to be the owner. They just have to be a person who believes, I think. And I teach young people. You've taught at university as well, I believe. And it's, that's why I do it. I want to have an impression on a young person. Hopefully something I say will motivate them in their life. And, I think that what's better than that?
Oh, that's just beautiful. And I know that you teach marketing as well as mentor people in your business. And I think that's just fantastic. And this brings me to the point, circling back to what you've just said, diversity in teams is so important. So important. And it's diversity is underrated. So the skills that you just
Mm,
highlighted, being the glue, often when there's a restructure or they're looking at financials, it's a technical person or someone who has one vantage, like a CFO, or it could be a manager from a technical perspective. It's yeah, and sometimes even if you have people and culture involved in the conversations, it's a very financially driven conversation. So I agree with
mm.
you. Businesses have got to be commercial. They've got to be viable. So quite often, I think that the glue is sacrificed, and organisations underestimate the potential cost.
Yeah, I think so. And I think the more, I think we went through a round of that, and then we've come out with companies, and I'd imagine that Atlassian and Canva and the other more modern startups in Australia are actually quite, you know, um, they're focused on culture. They're focused on that glue. They know its importance. They've done the management training. They believe, I guess, in people. And maybe it's actually trying to give your employees a great place to work, not just to make money, but because it's the right thing to do a little bit.
Yeah,
Um,
it's
mm,
so important to have a great place to work where people feel motivated, as you just talked
mm,
about, to come in and to be curious. It's like my husband's always saying to me that I always, doesn't matter what the role is, I always work too hard. My response to him is, I'm just really curious. And I want to learn more, and I, I kind of scratch something and I want to go down that rabbit hole, and that's
yeah.
what I choose to do because it's fun to me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it's what lights you up, right? And just on the diversity thing, because I noticed the other day I was on a call with my team, and I'm like, geez, we're diverse in every way you look at diversity in terms of what you can see from the outside. You know, sexual orientation, gender, nationality, just age, everything. But I'm just curious on whether that glue, I think it's more of a personality thing. And I wonder whether there's of any ways of, do you use a disc profile and say you need to have red, green, blue, yellow, or do you need do you look at it from a personality perspective and go, we need, different styles of people, in that way? Have you ever done any work in that area, or do you know much
No,
about
no,
that?
I'm not a disc or people qualified person. I
Mm,
do agree with you, though. I do feel that the team's diversity in terms of ethnicity, that's one thing, and sexuality is another. What is often underrated is age and experience in the
mm,
team. And I do think that the different personality types is a crucial. I love working in technology teams. And I think you and I have share the same quality, Andrew, in
mm,
that I call myself a tech translator because I speak
yeah.
human. So there can be this whole conversation going on. And even though the technical person thinks that the other person who's interested in that product understands all the acronyms and the features of that
Mm,
product, quite often you can be dealing with any stakeholder in the organization. It's not necessarily the person that's using it. It could sometimes be aligned business management, or it could be your P&C people. It can be anyone. So in my line of work, um, I'm working with an Indigenous organisation, and we're helping to foster Indigenous pathways through the programs that we invest in. And so not only am I selling technology, I'm also working with the Reconciliation Action Plan Committee within those organisations, there's usually at least 12 people, eclectic across the group. So to assume that the person across the room understands all of the acronyms that go with Atlassian is short-sighted.
Yeah, wow. Yeah,
So yes,
that's interesting.
I think it's really important to be able to translate and have a common language that's accessible to everyone. Equally, though, I love being in a sales call with a technology person, because I know their strengths, they know my strengths.
Mm.
I like to actually connect with the stakeholder, do my research, find out about the company's needs and how we can collaborate to help support their goals. The technical person, they can shine when it's their turn. I think that's the great thing about teamwork, is when everyone is really clear
Yeah,
on our strengths and our weaknesses, that we can work together.
yeah, I love that. And I think even though we're not, personality profile, HR people, we recognize in people the different skills and traits that we need to make something happen. Which is, you're right. You need the humanness, you need the technicalness, and not everyone's the same. But you need a blend that makes it work. And just like anything, I mean, a sporting team needs different players of different strengths and weaknesses to make it work. And that's the beauty of working in an organization. It's like, can we work together cohesively, and the more cohesive the better. It's the although sometimes you need the a little rough edges to make us stimulate and think and improve as well. But the way I sort of normally think about that is, if we've got the same values but different personalities, then we can work together for a common objective. But if we've got different values and the same personalities, then it often doesn't work out.
And that's where culture comes into it, because if people feel psychologically safe, so if I don't understand the technicalities of a product, but I feel safe enough to say, can you can you break that down? Pretend I'm 10.
Yeah, 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 slow
Oh,
down.
sorry, we just said what acronym? What does that mean? It's actually,
uh,
I love doing that. I call it asking smart, dumb questions. It's the obvious
mm,
question that we all assume that everyone knows the answer to, but quite often
yeah,
no one does.
that's actually brilliant, and it's like I consider myself reasonably adept at understanding people, listening, being empathetic. Um, but I don't presume I'm always like that. And I was at university teaching just last week, and there was two international students of Asian. They're from China, and they've got two laptops and an iPad out. And I'm like, "What are you doing? Are you gaming or something?" And I went to look, and they've got a translation because I speak very fast, and they're trying to keep up and understand what I'm saying and take notes. I'm like, oh my god, here I am judging, whereas really I should be trying to seek understanding. And it's, I think that we all, even if we're reasonably good at it, we should, you know, we can all try harder, I
I
think,
love
to
that you
understand people.
asked. You had the curiosity and the interest to actually ask what they were doing.
Well, I care. I want them to do well because I know it's very difficult. I mean, I always think to myself, they're over here in Australia from China and they've studied English, but they're not native speakers. Imagine if I was in China with a Chinese speaking lecturer and I'd studied, I would be drowning. It would not be
Yeah.
pretty. I and so I have empathy. It's like it's very difficult. They're away from their family. It's tremendously difficult for international students, and I feel like we don't treat them well enough or respect them enough in Australia because they're providing a lot of our economic value, not just at university, but when they stay here and have professional jobs and bring money from overseas over. It's a very important part of our culture, and I love the food too. So
It's one of the things that I love most about Australia, is that we can eat a different cuisine, nationality type, ethnic
Yeah.
origin every night of the week. Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, we're having a team lunch next week, and it's the flavors of your country. So it's like bring a dish from your local country. I'm like, what am I going to bring? I'm from Australia. Like sausages. I
Yeah,
don't,
we
you
can
know,
get
it's
anything really.
we.
Pad Thai.
Well, no, but yeah, because our cuisine is everyone else's cuisine, really, and but we've got such a multicultural office. They're wonderful at bringing in food, and it's I find interesting.
On that,
But
though, Andrew, you
mm,
talked about the plight of international students. I'm actually helping someone who is new to Melbourne from India who's looking for work. And culturally, it's very different. So,
mm,
regardless of where we are on our journey, having that cultural transition to a new environment, a new place, it's overwhelming on all fronts.
yeah, yeah, it is, and it's a matter of just talking to them and listening and understanding. Which brings me back to my whole networking point that we started with. Was that's what stood out for me about you is I go lots. I've been to lots of networking events, and not many people do stand out, but you seem particularly engaging and it's interesting because I wasn't like, oh, Michelle can help me with this or should be a great that for me. It was no more than just a personality, um, a remembrance of that you listened and you're attentive and you followed up and I was like, wow, that stood out, which is it's a shame that it's not more common. But I wanted to say, well, congratulations on that. But also, how where does that come from? Does that come from your curiosity? Does that come from your grandmother? Does it come from your mentor? From the first one, you know, why are you like that? Because it's not at, as normal as it should be.
Hmm, that's a great question. Why am I like that? Firstly, I'm insatiably curious, and I think we learn a lot from each other.
Mm,
I think I love sparking. I vibe best in person. I
yeah.
really enjoy receiving someone else's energy and learning about what they do. When I decided that I wanted to pivot from lots of different things that I've done into technology, I was like, okay, all right. Well, I hadn't been in that world. There's a lot of interesting
Mm,
terms like Scrum Master and engineering and all sorts of things that can be again a barrier. And just by talking to people, like, tell me what you do, and again breaking down the
mm,
barrier. Okay, so what does it actually mean? And people people want to help you if they know that you need help and they know how to help you. B,
mm,
they also really like to share what they're doing, to actually invest the time to care and to listen to what someone else is doing. A lot of people don't, sadly, have that experience.
mm, mm. It's interesting you say that. I think that a lot of people don't don't feel heard and seen by their partners or their family or their work friends. Um, and so when someone actually spends a moment and looks at them and listens and asks them follow up questions, not just surface level, but a few more, it becomes very engaging. Um, and as someone who does that, because I like learning about other people, I think we're similar. I like learning about other people. I'm always the one to ask questions, getting a deep and meaningful about their lives. And then when someone does it to me, I'm like, oh, hang on.
This is a really good point. So, on the surface level, that's me personally. Why do I go to networking events and why do I network? So, when I think about, it's really important with networking to understand what your career objective is and what your objective is. That will shape and define which events you go to and what you're seeking while you're there. It also is, for me, I'm in sales. So if for from a business level, it's really important for me to have a broad level of network, partly because there might be some aligned businesses that perhaps we can help each other.
Mm,
But if there's no connection, if there's no, oh yeah, oh, I'm gonna, I call it to be thought of and remembered when the need arises. So if I
yes.
know that Andrew is looking for another lecturing marketing gig, and I'm in that space, or that you're looking for, you've got openings for placement of so many social star, students, I can go, okay, oh my gosh, I was talking to someone the other day. You know, I think of
mm,
you, and you have come up in conversation many times. And I'm like, yeah, I do know someone that does that. Perhaps you should connect with them. Here's their
mm,
details.
mm,
So it's helping other people, and it's that give and take. So networking, there should, if you're going to have an ask, you should also offer a give. So networking is
mm,
connection, and how you build that connection is by showing interest, but by helping each other. So how do we help each
mm,
other? Think of them and refer to them when you see a
mm,
need. And
mm,
in turn, if you're really clear on what it is that you want to be known for and referred to in your networking circles, then people can help you. And
mm. There's a load of bread points I want to drill into on that, if you don't mind. So much. So the first thing, you do a lot of networking, which some people who are not extroverted don't enjoy doing. So I want to drill into that a bit. The second thing was, have something to say, like almost a pitch, if you like. If you like, make it clear who you are and what you do. I think that was a key point that you raised, and then helping them. I think that's actually a really important. I try and help people a few times without any necessarily ask at the end, because you're just building social capital with those people. You're building a brand of helpfulness, and then if you ever do need something, they would be more than willing to help you. And I think that's whenever someone says, I need clients, I'm like, great, go and help some people for free, and you'll probably get some referrals. Like, it's true, right? It's if you just go out asking for you and it's take, you're not going to develop a strong brand and be remembered, like you said.
And it's
So,
not immediate
you know,
either. So I call it karmic brownie
mm,
points, is that you just put goodness out in the world. You just, they're supporting people when and if they need it, thinking and referring to them, sending them an article because you know that they're trying to learn whatever it is, or,
mm,
liking their post. And how hard is it to
mm,
press like, or share
yeah,
a post? It's not hard, yet not many people
mm,
interact with posts. And even
mm,
to connect with people, it's an opportunity to understand more about what they do, and to
mm,
refer, think, share within their connections. It is, yeah, I think the more that you give generously, then the more will come back when you need it
yeah,
most.
yeah. Which is a great value point and belief that you're raising, which is a great thing to do, put into companies, right? It's like, when you're running a company, you do set the values and you set the principles by all the decisions you make and the words you say. And I love that, that it's let's help people, even if it's not commercial, because it'll come back to us. And I actually have that belief as well. Is that, not that we help everyone for free because if we run a business, but with our clients, and we do help a lot of people who are unable to afford our services, and without any expectation that they will in the future, because we think it's the right thing to do, and we have to balance that with being a commercial enterprise as well. But I think networking is very similar, and whether it's your company brand or your personal brand, you're still building a perception of yourself. And I remember, like I said, I remember you're active, you're liking posts, you're doing all those things, sending us things, you do all those things, and it was noted. And I wonder, do you get the reciprocality from a lot of people or just a few?
Ah, it The world and the universe works in mysterious ways. So sometimes you can think, that's right. Yeah, I helped that person. I don't actually keep a count or a tally on it because it defeats.
Well, you
You
can't.
can't. But when I've needed it most, so the 30th of October last year, there was a round of redundancies at my old workplace, and that impacted my role. I leveraged my network I decided the only way I was going to get a role was not through applications, through trying to get through a tracking system, beat the
Mm.
algorithm. For me, my strength is networking, and I was going to leverage that. So for every day for a week, I contacted 5 advocates in my network who I felt would advocate for me, would recommend me, enjoyed working with me. And it took 3 weeks, and I had a verbal offer for this role, which was unadvertised. And I had 2 people in my network both refer me to the same opportunity.
Wow.
And so,
That's not a testament. I don't know what it is. That's 3 weeks is amazing, because I know people have been out of work for more than a year, and it's tough.
well, the
So
older we get, when, I think the stat is those over 50, it can take on average up to 18 months to find a new role after redundancy.
yeah, that's exactly what I found with my clients. Yeah, it's because it's algorithmic, and as I said to the older people, who the hiring people are not us. They might be the people you work with at the end, but the hiring people are Gen Z, and they don't appreciate. We're in a different generation. We work differently, we act differently, and we don't share the same beliefs all the time. So, more often than not, they're hiring the 30-year-old who is, a millennial, and it's just it's an interesting thing I've noticed. I don't think it's on purpose. It's just an intuitive thing that we hire people we resonate with more, and I've found that people of the generations are different. So I've just noticed that. Might not be universal, but I have noticed a lot. So
It's interesting because I never believed in ageism until I got to my age and stage. However, you can for me, I was able to cut through ageism
mm,
through applications just purely by networking. And
yeah,
I
yeah,
work with people of all ages, and perhaps they're just being really nice to me. Uh, I don't see age. I often don't see it. So
mm.
I underestimate everyone's age and think that they're usually younger than what they what they are.
Must think I'm 25 then. That's great. Thanks.
Yeah, I thought it was in the 30s, but yeah.
Yeah. I get one next week too. But it's. I don't think it's when you're operating with people, but I know in recruitment, because a lot of things are driven by algorithms, and and in fact, you could almost put dating in the same category. It's algorithmic. If you're not this height, if you're not this income, you're not this. You know what I mean? Whereas it used to be more natural if you just meet people and you'd vibe with them, or you wouldn't. And so it was an energetic thing that then you might not consider those features. Whereas when you're programming it into a computer, it cuts out a lot. And I think that's the non-humanness that's creeping into our society. And I think that, I mean, you with your networking skill, and I think people are losing that skill too. They're not, because it's difficult, it's challenging going out there and meeting new people and having conversations. And I think that, but you, like you said, you put the karmic points in the bucket, and added them all up, and then when you needed it, it was right there, which is a testament to your philosophy. Um, so just to sort of wrap up a little bit, if you were going to give a presentation on being the network queen, which I hope you do, what would you say? What would be your key parting piece of advice for particularly young people out there, or even older people who want to do need a job? How do they start networking? What's your golden key sort of points?
Yeah, great questions. And interestingly, I am delivering, as you know, I am delivering a workshop called the Networking Advantage at Adelaide Last on the 23rd of
Mm,
next month of May. So, firstly, there are 3 key things when it comes to networking that I think are really important. The first one is being really clear on your networking objectives. Often, even experienced senior people, when I talk to them, like, oh, I'm at the end of my career, I don't have any objectives, I just want to get through the next bit. And when I break it down, they actually do. They want a contract
of course
extension.
I
They
do.
want, they
Yeah,
want a particular role. There are,
they want to sit on a board when they retire, or
even if
yeah.
it's not for profit or if it's got nothing to do with work, there's an
Mm,
objective. So that's really important, is to
mm,
understand your objective. The second one is to have a great, succinct, elevated pitch so people know how to think of you and how to refer you in their networking circles. The third one is I guess, be generous. Like, be curious and be generous. So if you have an ask, then always back it up with a give. Like, Andrew, thank you so much for having me on this podcast today. I really appreciate the opportunity. What can I do to support you in your next challenges?
Wow, what I'd love is a copy of your presentation that I could send out to my, to my members and to my network, because I think that this is such great advice, and I think that you know getting more of the detail, I think, which you'll do in your keynote, I think is gold for people, because it's easier to hide behind your computer and not go and meet people, and I think it's such a valuable skill. I love it, but not everyone does. And I think that if you can motivate a few people with your smile and wonderful attitude, then that would be a great gift to me and my members. So,
Well, I look forward to helping lots of people. I do have a lot of one-on-ones with people, but what I'd like to do is to be able to make networking less scary for those that find it confronting. Give them a few tips for icebreakers, some help them unpack what their objective is, give them a few tools so that they redefine and reframe what networking is, and they can use it to their advantage and also help others.
yeah, I love that. And you're going to write a book on this topic one day? Is that in the horizon?
Oh, you never say never. I'll start with the LAST, last conf Adelaide, and we'll go from there.
We'll say, stay tuned,
Yep.
people. All right, Michelle, it's lovely to talk to you again. I just really enjoy our conversations. I think we share the same philosophies, and I look forward to hearing more about your future endeavors in the networking space, as I think it's really needed, and I think you're the right person to deliver it. So it's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking to you as well.
All right, until next time. See you.
Thank you.